How did you get your first fortune before
Yeah.
LA Kings and everything?
And we sold the horse right thereafter to a breeding farm for $16 million.
Oh, that's a good investment.
How about Gretzky? He said, "You can give me your whole team. I wouldn't give you Gretzky." I said, "You can have the whole team. No problem. How would you like to be a king?" He said, "Yeah, right." I guess it leads us up to the fall. The next 2 years, the FBI did all this investigation. I was working with trying to maximize the results. So,
Were you scared to go to prison?
You're listening to Criminal Code, our story behind bars.
Welcome to Criminal Code Podcast, where we talk all things prison. I'm your host, Tony. Today I have my co-hosts here, Sam
How you doing?
and Sonny.
How you doing?
And we have a very special guest for you. We're excited to speak to him. He's a Los Angeles legend, single-handedly responsible for making the LA Kings they are today, and also the man responsible for bringing Wayne Gretzky to LA back in the heyday, Bruce McNall.
nice to have you.
Yeah, thank you so
Happy
much.
to do it. Love to talk to you and love prison.
And thank you for inviting us
More than
to your
welcome.
home.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate the hospitality, but your story, even before we came here, is absolutely fascinating.
It's a long time of stuff. I myself look back and I don't know how it all happened. I mean, just one thing after the other.
Yeah.
And if you could turn back the hands
Okay.
of time real quick for us,
I'll give you the.
how did you get your first fortune before
Yeah.
LA Kings and everything? Please tell us about that.
For some reason, when I was a kid, 7, 8, 9 years old, I loved history, especially ancient history, Rome and Greece specifically. I'd read everything I could about them. And one day, I was also collecting stamps and coins. You know, you get 1,000 stamps for $1. You know, and put them in little albums. One day, I went to a stamp and coin store in my area, Arcadia, California, and I saw in the case there were like 2 Roman coins. They were $1 each. I couldn't believe something 2,000 years old could be $1. So I bought them, and I bought the basic guidebook about Roman coins, written by a guy named David Sear, who later worked for me. And I got fascinated and began to study it. And when I would go to the various coin stores, I take a bus downtown LA, and there's a certain street there, Spring Street, which had all the coin shops
Yep.
down there. So I'd go down there and I'd visit them, and if they had any ancient coins, they had no idea what they had. So I'd buy them for like nothing. And eventually, by the time I was about 13, I guess 14, I started printing a list. In those days, a thing called a mimeograph existed. They don't even know
yeah.
what it is today.
Yeah.
And I would type up a description of the coins and a price. And I'd mimeograph off a bunch of them. And I put an ad in the LA Times for $2 a cost or something. So saying, send for free price list. So I did. And I was shocked that I was getting all these orders. So with the money I got, I kept buying more coins and more coins and more coins. And it became a pretty sizable little business. And not huge, but, pretty good business. A few $1,000s a month. By the time I was 14, 15.
This is as a teenager.
Yeah,
a
14,
kid.
15. Right?
Kid. That's
And in those days, that meant something, by the way. Now you can't buy an ice cream cone, I guess, for it. And so I ended up, when I was 16, I first went to Europe. I thought, well, let me check it out. So I visited the big coin dealers, as well as went to the actual bazaars or little shops there. And they had these bazaars in Turkey, Greece, Italy, all these little countries. So I go there, and I met all these guys that were the middlemen for the people that dug the coins up and to the people that sold them. So I started buying a little bit from them, and more and more and more. And I did one thing which was different than anybody else. I didn't cherry pick the coins. I bought everything. So I got good and I got drunk. And they loved that because they were able to.
Yeah, it's
So
good,
I
right?
became their darling. And when I was 19, having done this now, I'm at UCLA. I'm a graduate student. I'm working my doctorate. I wanted to be a college professor. I got what they call I got a big scholarship deal. It's the UC's largest award, and I was teaching as well, which was part of the program you had
Right.
to do. So I was teaching, and I was making $8,000 a year, and if I got lucky and became a professor, I'd make $20,000 a year. I was making that a month doing these coins. So it wasn't economics. I really enjoyed what I was doing.
Yeah.
So anyway, and I would go back and forth to these countries and got more and more knowledgeable. One day I ran into at one of the big auctions a guy named Bob Hecht. Bob Hecht was the most brilliant dealer in the world. He was very smart. He went to Swarthmore. He was an older guy at the time. He was in his 60s. And he taught me a lot about it. And he introduced me because he also spoke all these languages. He spoke not only Greek, Italian, French, you name it, and all Arabic, everything. I go to North Africa where a lot of the Roman coins are found. I go to Tunisia and buy things there. I went to all around. And I started selling, went from my little price list to selling the coins to a larger venue of people. And behind you there are some coin catalogs I had, starting in 1971, I believe it was. I said, well, I'll do what the other big guns, I'll auction. Started my auctions. And making a long story short, by the time 1971, I was the largest dealer in ancient coins in America and one of the premier coin dealers in the world.
And you were 19.
By that time, I was 21.
Okay, 20. Okay. A little older.
I got old.
You got old.
So I built this thing up, and I realized, and then I met through a fellow named, one of my professors at UCLA named Spiros Vrionis, who taught Byzantine history. He introduced me, I don't know how he knew them, he introduced me to a guy named Cy Weintraub. Cy Weintraub was the chairman of Columbia Pictures at the time. Very rich guy. And he loved the idea of art. But you know, these guys in Hollywood would buy these third-rate Picassos. They're really not very good, but they are the name. And I would tell him, hey, why don't you buy the art that I was able to get. I elevated from art to also dealing with Greek vases, sculptures, everything else in the world. So I started selling to him. He had these big parties, and they'd get fascinated by it. I tell them the stories behind it, that Cleopatra could have held this or that stories. They got fascinated. And so from there, I began selling to all these major producers, directors, movie stars in Hollywood at that time. So by the time I was in the early 70s, I built this thing up to being a very large company and making several $1 million a year. And so that's where it all really began. And I was able to go to the countries and take the coins and antiquities out of those countries into Switzerland, where Bob Hecht and I had an office. And again, it's totally legal to bring those things into this country. Now it isn't. In those days it was. Now it's not legal. But in those days it was. And I began to sell to these museums around the world. The Getty Museum here in Malibu was my biggest client. They would buy a lot of things. And all of which, by the way, they've given, not all of which, but 90% of which they've given back to the countries of origin.
Okay.
But I sold them, and the curator at the time was a guy named Jerzy Frell, who would run the Metropolitan Museum in New York, and hired by the Getty. And he was a fascinating guy. But he was very frustrated because he was only allowed to buy these major pieces, but he wanted to buy things, study pieces that people could learn from. And so I arranged donations. You know, he said yeah, we would buy a lot of stuff. A lot of it was not valuable, but it was interesting. Little Greek vase pieces and things like that. So I'd sell them to the people. He would arrange for them to give an appraisal, not from him, but from other dealers. And I couldn't give them the appraisal because I'm selling them. And it became a big story. There's a book written about this, by the way, a whole big story about this. And that really built it up to the point where when I had antiquities or coins being sent from Europe, Switzerland, into this country, I have them sent to the Getty Museum. Mm-hmm. And that became my store because I gave them first pick of whatever they wanted.
Right.
What they didn't want, they put on display there.
Yeah.
So when somebody wanted to buy it, look and see what I had, I said, well, go to the Getty Museum. Yeah. It's like going to an art gallery and sticking a red dot on there and saying it's sold. And so it was a great experience. I made a lot of money doing all this. And from that, I met this great variety of people, characters, mainly from the film and film business. So quite early on, trying to think of the dates, what came first. The horse business, I think came first. I grew up in Arcadia, which is where Santa Anita racetrack is. So a lot of my friends and their parents, so forth, are trainers and jockeys and whatever. And so I thought, well, I'd love to own a horse one day. And Cy Weintraub asked me, could I do him a favor at Columbia? There's a book that they wanted to buy, but they were afraid that the author would charge them way too much money because it was Columbia Pictures. And so I met a fellow named Joe Wambaugh, great author and a policeman at the time. Mm-hmm. So he said, meet me at this restaurant. So I go to this restaurant in the San Gabriel Valley, and I look at it. It's dark in there. I couldn't see where. Look in there. I see that all these girls are nude. Turns out to be a major strip club. In those days, they serve food, drink, and everything. And they're totally nude.
Yeah.
And so I sit down, and there's Joe Wambaugh, George Kennedy, an old actor that he wanted to use in his films. And we negotiated a deal, and I got the Choir Boys, which I didn't have anything to do with producing, but I gave it over to Cy Weintraub at Columbia, and they did that. But the people that own the restaurant also own racehorses. So I was fascinated, and they introduced me to a trainer that they had named Lynn Wheeler. And I said, well, I'd be interested. So he started buying some horses, and turned out to be quite successful. So in 1972, I bought a mare called Track Robbery, appropriate now, and she ended up winning the championship, the national championship of all racehorses, 24,000 horses that she wins it all. So, that was cool. And I started building the racehorse business up. And one day, I'm in Santa Anita in my box, and a guy comes up and sits in my box. Like, what? So he introduces himself, and I didn't hit it. Okay. And he left for a second, and one of the people, do you know what that is? That's Bunker Hunt. He's the richest man in the world. Oh, really? Okay. He sits down. He says, you're in the coin business, right? I said, yes. What was the ratio of gold and silver in the ancient world at that time? I told him roughly 24 to 1. 24 silver pieces for 1 gold. He was fascinated. And again, to make a long story short, he became my biggest buyer over many, many years of coins and antiquities.
Oh, but not horses?
No, and he and I shared huge number of horses together. I bought his entire crop with him. He owned half, I owned half. So at one point, Hunts and I owned probably over the years a total of 2,000 horses or so. So we're major players in that world. So the horse business, well, I think was my first entree into this through the hunts. For all those years, they were by far my biggest buyers. They'd spend easily $100 million a year.
Wow.
It was a lot of money in those days,
Yeah,
by the way.
I mean, 100 million is like $1 billion.
In 1972, it was
Yeah,
probably
more than
10 billion.
Yeah.
On a side story of that, it's kind of amusing. They're very right wing, very right wing. They make Trump look like a communist. Okay, he was one of my dear friends that I had met through Cy Weintraub was Barry Gordy. Barry Gordy owned a little company called Motown Records.
Yeah.
So Barry and I became very close friends. And Barry always wanted to own horses because his sister loved the horse business. So I said, okay, come in with me on a horse. And he did. There's a horse called Argument. And we bought him in France. We paid $600,000. I remember calling him up and saying, you want half? I got a horse. Okay, how much? Well, your half would be $300,000. What? 300 grand? I thought it was like 3,000. I said, "Oh, not the horses I buy. You got to." He says, "Okay, I'm in." Turns out, within a month, the horse ends up winning the Arc de Triomphe, which is the biggest race in the world at the time. It would be like the Breeders' Cup today.
Yeah.
And we sold the horse right thereafter to a breeding farm for $16 million.
Whoa, that's a good investment.
So Barry said, "Oh, I love this business." So we bought more horses together over the years. But one day, and he came in with me with some of the hunt horses. And so I said, "You want to go meet Bunker?" So we flew to Dallas. I introduced him to Bunker Hunt. And remember, he's the head of the John Birch Society. And I don't know how this is going to play out. So we meet at the Petroleum Club, the big club that the Hunts had at the time in Dallas. And we sit down, and Barry says, "The only black guy I see are these waiters or people cleaning up here." I said, "Oh yeah, shit, I didn't realize it. Didn't." So but they were great. They got along great. Everything was wonderful. I said, "Oh, this is good." The next day, Bunker calls me and he says, "My sister, who owns the Petroleum Club, threw me out because I bought a black guy." And he said, I forgot he's black." I said, "You sat with him. You knew he was black." I didn't recognize it because he really didn't. He wasn't racist, but he didn't register. But he was so mad at his sister that the Petroleum Club was in this building that he owned because he bought the building.
Yeah.
Then he decided to buy the building. It was $80 million or something at the time, and threw her out. Threw the whole club out. Said, "Okay, bye-bye." So it was kind of funny. Barry loved that story over the years. I still talk to him to this day. He's 95 or so now, doing very well, great. Anyhow, I went from that to in the movie business. Again, I had met so many people in selling them coins and antiquities that they always say to me, "We're buying from you. Why don't you come in with us on some film stuff?" And in 1972, I think it was, Peter Goober, who at that time was chairman of Columbia, at that time, later became chairman of Sony and now owns the Golden State Warriors and owns every sports team you can imagine, Dodgers, everything. He said, let's do a movie. He said, "I have a little movie I'm doing now called The Deep, and we have a coin issue in there, and can you be the coin guy?" I said, "Sure." So I first got my little taste. I didn't invest anything. I just got my little taste in it. And from there, it led on to me getting involved with the film business by financing these films. A company called Sherwood Productions was formed. I had a guy who lived on Sherwood Lane off of Coldwater Canyon here. That's why we named the company. And we made several movies in the late 70s and the early 80s. from some little ones. Brimstone and Treacle was the first one in 1978, I think it was. And it started, I read the script, I didn't understand it. It was the worst script I ever read in my life. But Sting loved this thing, and he wanted to star that. And it was Sting that brought us the film. So I said, really? He said, I want to start this. Okay, so the movie would cost $2 million. I said, okay, I'll put up the money, but I want the soundtrack from the Police. He says, well, we're signed with A&M Records. Well, Jerry Moss, who owned A&M with Herb Alpert, also owned a huge number of horses, later on winning the Kentucky Derby with one. So I called Jerry. I said, this is the deal, and blah, blah. And he said, okay, well, we could partner it with you. So I did. The movie came out, did almost no business, which I thought it wouldn't. But the soundtrack went through the roof.
Yeah.
So that ended up profitable. So it was my playing around in the movie business a little bit. Later on, we did War Games, Mr. Mom, Blame It on Rio, Weekend at Bernie's.
Yeah.
All these movies at the time.
Classics.
So a lot of movies. And at the same time, I was always interested in sports. I was a hockey fan for some reason. I became a Kings fan. Nobody would go to the games. When they first got here in the mid '60s. I mean, nobody went. So you could go at the last minute and get tickets for almost nothing.
Yeah.
Sit where you wanted.
Yeah.
And I thought it's kind of cool. I enjoyed the sport a lot. And Jerry Buss owned the Kings along with the Lakers. And I would always say to Jerry, we got to do something to build this thing up. How about if I buy them from you? And he'd always say, no. And I ended up loaning Jerry money over the years. Not big sums at a time, but 10, 20,000, 30,000. It ended up that he owed me quite a bit of money, a couple $1 million finally. So in 1986, he said, I'll tell you what, if you forgive the $2 million I owe you, give me another $2 million for $4 million, and you can have 25% of the Kings. So on the basis of $16 million, I bought 25%.
That's crazy, man.
And
16
Jerry
million.
Jerry was so nice. He had me run the team, and he was busy with the Lakers. So I basically did, and then over time, he said, you want to buy 50%? I did that, another $4 million. And the next year, 1987, I ended up buying 100% of the team. And when I bought the team, I realized this is Hollywood. And LA is about star power. It's all about stars. And Jerry Buss would tell me about this too. In fact, he was the first one to mention Gretzky. He said, I asked Peter Pocklington, who owned the Edmonton Oilers, and Gretzky at the time, and it was always not. So all these board meetings I would go to, with a lot of them every year, I would see Pocklington. Every time I'd bug him, how about Gretzky? He said, you can give me your whole team. I wouldn't give you Gretzky. I said, you can have the whole team. No problem. Take it all. No. Then one day in 1988, the summer of '88, he calls me and he says, you really want Gretzky? He said, yeah. He said, well, we have to make it a trade. I want draft picks, I want players, but most important, I need $16 million right now. Okay. So I sent him $16 million. The minute I did that, I said, and then, but I said, I have to get Gretzky's approval, because if he doesn't want to come, I don't want him.
Yeah.
He's a big star. I'm not going to have a guy come to a place he doesn't want to go. So I said, I need permission to talk to him. No, you can't have permission. Well, by this time, as you can imagine, knowing me from the ancient coin and art business, I'm smuggling things, a no didn't mean a whole lot to me.
Yeah.
Other than motivate me. That I got excited about. So I said, okay. I call Wayne. And we had known each other a bit because he, over the time that I owned the team, he would always come by and smack me with a stick or something when down near the ice and welcome to the league. And we'd go to dinner a few times. And then I called Wayne. I said, Wayne, how would you like to be a king? He said, yeah, right. I said, no, I think I can get you. He's interested in trading for you. He didn't believe me. Okay. One day, Wayne's in my office. Pilkington calls. I put him on the speaker. We started talking about the trade. It became evident that's going to happen. So he hung up. He says, okay, I'm a king now. And he was the one, Wayne was the guy that told me how to do it, how to structure the trade. So he picked Michael Kruszyninski. They wanted Robitaille. He said, we can't give him Robitaille. I need somebody I can pass a puck to that can score. I can't do it all.
Yeah.
He said, but give him Jimmy Carson, who's a top center on my team. He was the highest scoring American in American history at the time. And he was 19 years old, number 2 draft choice of all. And give him, because Jimmy will no longer be the number 1 guy, he'll be 2, and that won't make him happy. So give him. So, like a long story short, we ended up making a trade, giving him 3 first-round draft picks, and then he said, "Don't give him 3, all stagger every other year, so we can have some draft picks." So Wayne structured the deal. So we did the deal, got Gretzky, and of course, I thought in my mind at the time we would increase the fan base. I thought we would be a better team. I had no clue to what it ultimately meant at the time. Wayne may have had a better idea, but I didn't really. And as you know, we would go out on the road, preseason games, and have preseason games in Florida and Dallas and all over the place. And ultimately led to these cities getting teams. From the Ducks to Tampa Bay to expansion became huge. And again, that was something that happened as a result, but we didn't plan it. Then, fast forwarding a bit here now, but then in 1991 or 2, I was elected as the chairman of the league. I became the chairman of the National Hockey League.
For the NHL.
And I was probably half the age of everybody else. I mean, Bill Wirtz was the chairman before me. He owned the Chicago Blackhawks. And they were very conservative. Their idea, I wanted to build like the television market. I wanted to do a deal with ESPN. And they would always say, no, this is going to hurt our beer sales. People won't come. It'll be on TV. I said, no, it'll expand it. And ultimately, they believed me. They elected me chairman of the league unanimously, believe it or not. And so I was chairman of the league. And my first job was to find a commissioner, because the commissioner they had was John Ziegler, nice man, a lawyer, but old school, and we needed new blood. And so we put feelers out to these big companies about who were CEOs of their companies, and met several of them. I didn't feel right. So I called the chairman of the NBA, and he and I had breakfast one day, actually, and then the commissioner, David Stern, also got involved. So David and I met again, and I said, I'd like to hire you. And he said, well, I'll pay you twice what the NBA is paying you. And he said, I'd love to, but I really can't. But you could take one of my right-hand people. You can't take Russ Granick, who's my guy I'm grooming to take over for me, but you could talk to Bettman, Gary Bettman. I said, okay. Met with Bettman. He was so knowledgeable. He knew what he was doing. He knew the market. And so I went to my partners, the other owners, and I said, I have the guy. I knew there was a bit of a problem here because the NBA, the NHL owners always hated the NBA because they were the big focus, and the NHL was nothing, except for the Gretzky thing. So I had Bettman come in, talk to them, get interviewed, and immediately he was hired as commissioner. People, when I saw Bettman a couple years ago at a Dodger party that Peter Guber actually had at his house. And I said, it's funny, I get all this credit for getting Gretzky, but getting you may have been more important. And he laughed. He says, Well, I don't know about that, but thank you very much. So that was that part of the story
Yeah.
with hockey and the coins, and that's that. And as I'm building these various things up, these entities, I have Gretzky and I became very close. He and I would share many things. One of the things was we were in New York one day, and I think we may have had a couple of drinks,
Just a couple.
just a couple. And I said, "Hey, there's Sotheby's is auctioning some baseball cards. Do you ever collect baseball?" "Oh, I love collecting baseball cards." I said, "Well, I did a little of that too." I said, "There's one card in there that's supposed to be the greatest card of all time. This Honus Wagner card." I said, "It's estimated to go for $100,000. I said, "But I'll guarantee it'll go for like double that." He says, let's go. So we go in the auction house, and the minute we sit down and the card starts to go, it blew by 200,000 before we could take a breath. And Gretzky, keep going. So I kept bidding. We ended up buying it for $570,000, I think it was.
Crazy.
And everybody thought we were nuts buying a card.
Who was bidding against you guys? Who was the other guy?
I don't remember the time who the big guy was. Oddly enough, it reminds me of the coin business though, because when I was 23 years old, the big auction house at the time was Bank Loy, a Swiss bank, and they had this huge auction going taking place. And the big coin there, equal to at that time the Honus Wagner card, was called a decagram, big silver coin from Athens, struck a time that they were building all the major players at that time, about 450 BC. And anyway, I ended up buying that coin for $440,000, which set a world record of any coin ever.
Wow.
Very similar. I sold that coin later for $2 million. So I realized again, you buy the best, you have no problem. The Honus Wagner card was the best at the time, and so we bought it together. And this guy comes along. He says, "We're starting a company to grade the cards and encapsulate them so they can't get damaged, and we'd love to do this, and you'll be the first one." So we gave it to a company called PSA.
The PSA's like
And
the
we
main
gave
guy
him
now.
the card, and to this day it is still in the same encapsulation. It's PSA 0001, the very first card they ever did. It says McNall Gretzky card, Honus Wagner, and again everybody thought we were crazy paying that kind of money for it. Subsequently, most recently, I was told that the owner of the Arizona Diamondbacks now owns the card, and he was offered some crazy number like $40-50 million. So
And he turned it down.
which he turned down.
Yeah.
So
How much did you sell it for?
well, that comes into the area of the
okay.
prison area,
Okay.
which you love the most.
All right, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I ended up I basically gave it to Gretzky.
Okay.
I said, "You better take it yourself," and so forth. I think he sold for $600,000.
Okay. So not much.
No, minor profit.
Yeah.
And then the people he sold it to auctioned it, had a raffle.
Yeah.
And like, $10, you could have a raffle to get the card. So some lady in Atlanta or someplace
Raffle.
gets it, doesn't know what to do, auctions it again, and I think it went for $1 million.
Wow. From a $10 raffle.
Yeah, from
Some
a
kind
$10
of
raffle. And then it went on from there. It's been sold several times and always went higher and higher until it ends up with the current owner.
Yeah.
Now. And so the card story was that, and then I guess it leads us up to the fall.
Right.
Not the weather.
Getting back to that though, when did for the Kings fans out
Yeah.
there, when did you decide, or who ultimately decided to change the colors?
Oh,
To
what happened was I would go to the players and I would say, "Do you like your colors?" And they would say to me, "We feel like bananas on ice." This is before I got Gretzky. pre-Gretzky. And I said, okay, well, what do you like? They said, we like black and white. White at home, because it's normal color, and black on the road, makes us look tougher. And why don't we do silver for your coins, your coin business? Silver. I said, okay. So, I really like the Raider colors also.
Right.
I called Al Davis. I said, Al, I think I'm doing this. He didn't like it. Well, not too happy, but what can you do? He said, okay. So we changed the colors in 1988 to the black and silver. And when I got Gretzky, we introduced him at the press conference. And I said, ladies and gentlemen, we have a model coming out with our new jersey. And it was Wayne Gretzky came out wearing the new jersey.
And was that the first time announcing Wayne Gretzky?
First time announcing Wayne Gretzky.
Man. New colors.
New colors and Gretzky at the same time.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that was that. And, again, we had a great time. Wayne and I, there's a Honus Wagner card. He also wanted to get in the horse business. We ended up with many, many horses, including 2 that won the Arc de Triomphe later, the biggest race in the world. One called Samaras in 1990. It paid like 20 to 1. It was a long shot, but he won the race.
Wow.
We paid $800,000 for the horse and sold him for $20 million.
Okay.
So Wayne was not displeased with
Yeah.
that. And speaking of which, going back to the Wayne thing, when I got Wayne, my concern was he only had 2 years left on his contract. And I knew I had to sign him for more. And I said, Wayne, what do you want? He said, I don't know. I have no idea. I said, well, I don't know either. So I said, well, let me check it out. So I called Magic Johnson. I said, Irvin, you make how much? $3 million? Jerry told me, Buzz? Yeah, I said, I make $3 million a year. I said, okay. I go to Wayne. I said, I'll make you the highest paid player in all of sports, equal to what Magic is making now. $3 million a year. Wayne says, you're crazy. That's way too much. You can't pay a hockey player that kind of money. Here's what you do. Pay me $2 million a year and save $500,000 so we get some free agents to help me out, and $500,000 for playoff bonuses for the other players. That's what we did.
Nice.
Except one thing. I made a deal with his father, Walter, that he would always be the highest paid player in the league at all times. If anybody came along and made more, he would always make more. And that continued. The funniest part of that story was my best friend in hockey at the time was Howard Baldwin, who owned the Hartford Whalers way back when I first bought the team, then later on owned the Pittsburgh Penguins. Turns out he made a deal with Mario Lemieux.
Same thing.
Same thing. So all of a sudden, but we didn't know it.
Yeah.
We didn't know it. I didn't tell him. He didn't tell me. So he paid Mario $5 million. So I paid Wayne $5.5 million. He paid him $6 million. Then I paid him $6.5 million. It kept going, escalating like that until we finally talked and said, "What are you doing?" We realized what was happening. It was very funny.
Yeah, that's
so
funny.
that Wayne became the highest paid player in the world. And that reverts back to the Gretzky thing. But and then also in 1991, I guess it was, John Candy was a huge hockey fan.
Okay.
I sat on the board of Hollywood Park Racetrack at the time, along with several people, rather Cary Grant, among others, and one guy named Harry Arnest. Harry Arnest owned the Toronto Argonauts in the Canadian Football League. And I didn't know anything. I haven't even heard of the Canadian Football League. No idea. And I said, you're trying to sell it, huh? He said, yeah. What do you want for it? $5 million. I called Wayne. I said, Wayne, what do you know about the Toronto Argonauts? Oh my God, they were my favorite team growing up. They're a great football team. That's what I live for. I said, okay, well, we could buy them, I think. I called John Candy, who was, again, the biggest King fan around at the time, a celebrity. And I told him as well. He said, oh my God, I'm a huge fan. I said, okay, I'll buy it for that, and you guys could have like whatever you want, 10% each or something like that. So they got into that, and I ended up with a football team in Canada. But very very much like hockey, they were they were playing where the Blue Jays played in the Sky Dome, they call it, and it holds like 55,000 people, and they were getting like 15,000 people. What can we do to change it? Well, so I talked to Joe Montana. I talked to a lot of big guns, and couldn't get anybody. Okay. So I said, all right. So the number 1 draft pick that year was going to be Rocket Ismail from Notre Dame, Heisman Trophy guy. And, you know, he was by far the number 1 pick. So I meet with him and his mother, who ran him basically. And Rocket, I said, how would you like to be the biggest fish in all country of Canada? At that time, the first round pick was held by New England. They were Brady-less then, so they weren't that good. I said, otherwise you're going to be running back kickoffs and being a third wide receiver or whatever, and we'll pay you more than you'll ever see in the NFL. So after lots of talks and negotiations, we made a deal. And one thing they stuck to was he wanted to play in the NFL. I said, well, what team do you want to play for? I want to be a Raider. I call Al Davis. I said, Al, I'm gonna take Rocket Ismail. He will not be, therefore he won't be the NFL's first round draft pick, number 1 pick anymore, because I'll have him. But I'll tell you what you do. If you want to, in the 4th or 5th round, it won't be worth anything. And you can have him. I need him for 2 years. I got to get this team going. Then you could have him for the next 2 years. So we made that deal. I paid Rocket $17.8 million.
Wow.
For 4 years. And
back in the day, that was
back in the day, it was a lot of money. And yeah, it was a big contract. The biggest, actually, in all of football.
Yeah.
Bigger than any NFL player ever got at the time. So we ended up signing Rocket. And I remember that the very much like when we got Gretzky, we sold out immediately. Ticket sales went crazy. Yeah. Everything was nuts. Halftime show. John Candy arranged it so the Blues Brothers would come. So he would sing with the Blues Brothers as well. So the stadium had at halftime the Blues Brothers. And that was our first game. And we won. And kept going. And every halftime I get Celine Dion would sing. I get these big stars at the time, especially Canadian stars. And the place sold out. It was great. And that year, the first year of Rocket, we go all the way to the Grey Cup, which is the Super Bowl equivalent in Canada. And I remember we were playing Calgary. Calgary had a quarterback named Doug Flutie, who was pretty doggone good. Yeah. And they took a 5-point lead, I think it was. Anyway, they took a lead. A couple of minutes left to go in the game. And so we thought we all went down to the field. It was so freezing because it was held in Winnipeg that year. It was like 40 below zero. I mean, it was really, really cold. We go down there all bundled up down to the field, and Rocket was on the sidelines, and I went over to him and I said, Rocket played a great game. He had a great game. You know, he said, it's not over. You know who I am? I got this. They kick off to him. He runs it back for a touchdown. We win the game. So we won the championship the very first year we got him. And there was a parade of 2 million people up and down in Toronto, a massive parade and all the rest of it. So you can imagine Gretzky, John Candy, a huge star, and myself, and winning the championship in Canada.
That's crazy.
And So that's that. And I guess by that time it leads us to what happened in my life, which was I was so busy dealing with the big stuff, for me anyway, the high profile things, the Kings, the Argonauts, that I wasn't really paying much attention to the coin business anymore, or even the movie business. And the movie business is very expensive, as you know. And the guy that ran it was a guy named David Beagleman, who I hired. David had been the chairman of Columbia Pictures. He later became the chairman of MGM, United Artists. He knew everybody and everything. I had lunch with him and Spielberg. We talked about some projects. And David was a brilliant man, but a lot of troubles. He got in a problem with Columbia when he forged a check, and it became a very famous book and a very famous story. And MGM, being a public company, Kirk Kerkorian, who owned MGM, calls me. He says, "Look, you need to have somebody run your company. We're a public company. We're going to make David available. You know him quite well. He bought coins from me too, David did." I said, "Okay." So we met, and I hired him to run the company. Well, what happened was that as we're making more and more movies, the overhead became crazy. He was used to a studio environment with a lot of people in a big studio. So we ended up with a whole building on the what is now Sony lot, at that time the MGM lot, a huge studio. We had 3 floors, hired 1 million people. Overhead was going crazy, and we had a tremendous deal with Fox for an output deal. We had a deal for foreign sales with another company Mark Damon owned, and I did a deal with Jose Menendez for the video rights at the time when he owned the video company. So I thought everything was fine. But I saw the debt was getting higher and higher, but I didn't know quite how this was working with the company. One day I realized I got a notice from one of the banks that lent us this money mainly for that business, and I said, "What the heck? We owe them like $150 million or something like that, $200 million. Oh my God!" So I called this banker at the Bank of America. "Oh, well, it's okay, no problem, it'll be fine." Because I realized these bankers who were making at that time $30,000, $40,000 a year, who were coming to the Kings games, sitting with all these movie stars, presidents. I would have, I had Reagan would come to the games constantly. All the presidents, everybody would come. Every movie star in town. They wanted no part of having anything go down. So they kept saying, "It's okay, it's okay." And it actually lent us more, because every time David would ask, he'd be more. And the other banks, the same story. Every banker, same story. "Don't worry, it's okay, we'll take care of it." All right, okay. Then one day, and I'm not exactly sure exactly how this all happened, because the guy went into some sort of protective custody. One of the employees who worked for me, who was working on one of these deals, apparently went to the FBI, said that our loans were fraudulent. Next thing I know, I get a subpoena. Dacus took him to supply documents. So I called lawyers, and I called this lawyer friend, and he said, "Yep, okay." And that very day, they went and to all the top executives in my company. Never came to me. All the others. Okay. They told them what they told them, what they knew. Basically, saying the banks instructed us, and we just did. And so I went in to see the FBI, and I told them the truth. this is what happened. To my knowledge, I didn't do everything, but yeah, I was aware of the inflation of things and what was going on somewhat. And they ended up, saying okay, and they eventually offered a deal where they would, if I pled guilty, they would let everybody else off. They wouldn't do any prison time. My two top people would have to plead guilty to a felony, but they wouldn't do any time. So I pled guilty to what would be 14 years in prison.
What were you looking at if you went to trial?
Who knows?
Oh, exactly.
Who knows?
That's a big number.
It could be a bigger number.
Yeah.
But more importantly to me was the fact that, that I couldn't see my people going to prison. They also threatened the indicting everybody else in the world that I knew. Big time lawyers I was using in the film business, and I just couldn't stand it. And also, the justification issue became a problem because my people and some of the lawyers, other lawyers I had, Frank Rothman being one, who ran Skadden Arps, giant firm, and also later the vice chairman of MGM. And Frank said, "Don't plead. It's not." The banks did. They were complicit. They were the ones telling your people. And I realized something, though. It came to me that if a girl at 16 years old says, "Yes, you could have sex with me," does it make it right? Or is it still illegal?
Right.
It's still illegal. So even though the banks were saying yes, yes, it's still not right. So I said, it's still not right. So I pled. The next 2 years, the FBI did all this investigation. I was working with trying to maximize the results. I had to sell every asset I had. Sell the King, sell the Argonaut, sell the Honus Wagner cards, sell everything. So I'm helping them do that, hoping to reduce the sentence by, making restitution as much as I could. So
But they wanted how much?
it was $350 million.
That's crazy. Okay.
And they got obviously some
Some of it.
that from the sale of all these things, but still a lot was owed. Or I think it actually was so much that it ended up after the payments at $350 million after
Oh,
they
after.
paid. Yeah. So I don't know how much it started with. I mean, God knows.
It was probably a big news spectacle too. How
was
did you
huge.
how did you handle that mentally, emotionally?
Yeah. It was front page every day. And the funny thing was that all of my friends and people remained there for me. Gretzky, for example, put up all the legal money for my expenses on legal fund. They were writing letters to the judge and doing all this stuff, and it was really amazing. In a way, it was like, because when you're on top of the world, at that time I was probably one of the top, maybe in L.A., probably one of the bigger names in L.A. And all of a sudden, you fall. And how is that going to affect people? And it was nice in a way to see that they stuck with me. It was a great feeling in a way. So
Right.
despite the drama that happened in my life, it was in some ways not bad because I'm learning something. So they put this FBI agent on me to be the trustee. It was Todd Nielsen. He was a trustee of my whole estate.
Yeah.
I told him what happened. He didn't believe a word I said. As FBI agents tend not to.
Yeah.
And I told him what the banks, this and that. So, come my sentencing, usually victims show up at a sentencing hearing.
Yeah.
All the victims were no individuals, they were all banks.
Yeah.
There were like half a dozen banks. No banks wanted to show up. They wanted no part of this. Yeah. So the only person that showed up was this FBI agent. So he goes to the stand. He says, basically, the banks were involved. They were the ones telling him what to do. I don't know why he's even here. The prosecutors, I think, were really, really mad, So the judge, his name was Paez at the time, and the FBI agent who was they were both Mormons. And so the prosecutor was saying all these horrible things, and and the judge was like, "We don't do that. We, as Mormons, don't do that. The trustee is telling the truth." So the judge said, "Look, I'll reduce your sentence as much as I can. So I'll cut it a little bit more than half, down to 70 months, 5.5 years."
Yeah.
So that's what I got, 70 months. And then the fun started.
Fast forward.
Yeah.
All that success, then the house of cards fell.
Yeah. And the funny thing was that, so they sentenced me, at that time, the prison at Boron was there, and also in Lompoc, which is about an hour north of Santa Barbara. So I get sentenced to go to Lompoc. I'm supposed to report there it's sometime March in 1997. So,
Were you scared to go to prison?
I talked to enough people who had gone. At that time, you're nervous,
Yeah.
but I wasn't really too upset. I was nervous, concerned. So Michael Francis, I had bought his book rights because he was a mob boss. He was a Colombo family mob guy. Very brilliant and very, very smart. And he had a unique story because he's the only mob guy who pled and would not talk. Wouldn't talk at all to anybody. And there was a deal he made with him. He did 10 years,
Okay.
but wouldn't talk. And the reason was, he ended up pleading, was that he was in love with this girl who he wanted to get married, and she basically says, if you remain in the mob, I'm not going to marry you. So he quit the mob. So his book was called Quitting the Mob. The only guy to quit the mob and live. So we became friends because I had bought the book. He knew I was going to prison. So he said, well, I'll take you there. So he and his wife and my then girlfriend, Mara, all of us drove up to Lompoc. Check in. He says to me, bring a duffel bag of nothing contraband, but just things that are legal, but extra things you may need. Shoes, the gray sweatpants, that kind of stuff. The things that federal prison have. So I bring this duffel bag, go to check in. The guard says, well, Mr. McNall, I'm sorry, but you can't bring anything in. Okay. I give the thing back to Michael. They spend hours of processing you and getting your bag, bunk, and all that kind of crap. Finally, I get to sign this bunk. They take me over to it. And I look under the bunk, and there's my duffel bag. I'm going, what the heck? And then this guard comes over. He said, would you please tell Mr. Francis we got this for you?
Jeez, instant relief. As soon as you heard that, right?
Yeah, and it showed me the power that Michael Francis and the mob has in that world as well. And so, okay. Turns out, when I got out and we talked about it, that they drove down. Michael recognized a guy in the prison who was outside doing some yard work. He puts in a wheelbarrow, takes out, and all of a sudden, some sirens going off and everything's going crazy. Some guard behind them saw what was happening, and then saw, oh, Michael Francis, okay, go on. The girls, of course, were freaked out, thinking they're all going to get arrested, everything's crazy. And, so now I have this bunk in this thing, and I noticed that they had, in the television room, in that place, there were 2 television rooms, one Spanish speaking and one non. and both TVs were geared up, and all these chairs are lined up, and there was a program going on CBS about me that night because they knew I was checking in.
Right.
So the TV is going on, and
Who
all
he
these
is,
and the guards are there when I watch, and all the inmates are there. Oh, please sit down here with us. You know, yeah, I was very popular. I thought, geez, nothing's changed. I was popular on the outside. I guess I'm popular here too. So, I that was okay. It was fine, and my bunkie was a guy with about half the teeth. He was from Alaska, some bank robber from Alaska, and turned out to be a very nice guy, who was a manager of the softball team at that time. There were several teams. And so he said, I'll tell you what, I'll sell you the team for 2 cups of soup. So I bought the team for 2 cups of soup. There's an LA Times article that came on about that, about me doing
Deals in for
so
2 cups of soup.
So
The currency?
yeah, that was at that time. Yeah, Lompoc, a couple of cans of soup. So, I get this team and
That's amazing.
yeah, and then right away, all these friends would come to visit me in addition to family and so forth. I had Gretzky would come all the time. Robitaille would come constantly. I mean, it was But what happened was, when like Gretzky would come, the guards and everything were out there saying, "Oh, would you sign this for me? Could I get a stick one day?" So he would bring it. He'd bring sticks and this and that. So all the guards were on the take. They all ended up with it, from the counselor to the other, all the people up to the ward level, not him. They were all doing this, and so okay. I mean, I wasn't really focusing on what that meant.
Right.
And then and then during that time, when they're getting all this stuff, the guards wanted to help give me something back. So they would look the other way for things, and they gave me this job at Vandenberg Air Force Base, which is a key job to get. It's very open and whatever. And the guards would take me to a hotel where I'd meet my girlfriend there.
That's crazy.
All the perks. Huh?
Yeah.
Tell us more.
Yeah.
How was your situation different than most of the prisoners?
Yeah, a little tough, a little tough. And then they would take me to dinner and out, and and I had various guests would come. I remember Alan Thicke came with his wife at the time, and we had a picnic on the lawn out there at Lompoc, and the guards went and got me one of the fast food places, and that was my life. So, it was an interesting transition until one day, among other things, Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell came to see me, and they came to see me on a Friday, and it's no visiting on Friday. So they came and they said, "Oh," the guard said, "Don't worry about it. We'll show you all around and take you around," which they did. I didn't know that they were there. Nobody told me. I didn't know they were coming. I would have told them, "No, come on Saturday or Sunday."
Right.
I didn't know. So next thing I know, I'm put in the shoe or the hole, we would call it. And like, what? Why? Escape attempt. Escape attempt? I mean, I was here the whole time. Anybody will tell you that. Well, and then later on I find out it's because Kurt Russell had just made Escape from L.A., so they thought it was going to escape from Lompoc.
Yeah.
Well,
and he did fly in his private jet.
He did. He flew. He himself flew.
Kurt Russell actually flew his private jet.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
He flies himself.
Yeah.
And so he flew in there himself, and oh God. So, but that was very quickly absolved. That was fairly easy. I was out. But the cops for the cops, SAS, I think they're called,
Yeah.
Guards
Gu-
to watch the guards.
guards that watch the guards, realize that something's going on. So they put me in the hole. But they don't put me in the hole in Lompoc minimum. They put me in the maximum hole. So I'm in the maximum security prison in the hole there. A little rough.
Yeah. Complete opposite, right?
Yeah. And they would, and the guards I knew would come in and I guess, basically asking me, don't talk about us. I guess I wouldn't anyway. Don't relax. Don't worry about it. But every day, SAS guys would come, FBI would come, interrogating me. Who's doing this? What guards are there? I said, meaning other than you? They didn't like that answer, by the way.
Yeah, I'm sure.
That annoyed them. So I just sat there. And I learned a little bit about it. So when other guys would come into the whole area, I would say, look, just fucking plead guilty. Because you'll get 2 weeks in the hole. Plead guilty. If you fight it, you could be here for forever. Who knows? So finally, I'm there and waiting. 6 months, I'm in the hole.
Yeah, 6 months.
6 months in the hole in the major prison.
You get what, 30 minutes to an hour a day outside your cell?
In theory,
In theory.
but you're supposed to get an hour a day out into another cage.
Yeah.
But they
And you get like 1 shower a week or something.
1 shower a week.
Yeah.
It was not pleasant.
No.
That was the worst time in my life. Long time sitting there by yourself. But I still had visitors. The
Oh, you
last
can have
visitor I
visitors.
had there was Luke Robitaille
Okay.
and his whole family. But what happens is if you're in the hole in the maximum security prison, everything is shut down. So all the inmates have to go back to their cells
When you have a visitor.
when you have a visitor.
Okay.
Oh, God. So I didn't really, but they would come and they were, oh, you okay? By that time, I am a mess, because you
6
can't
months.
shower
Yeah,
6 months.
yeah.
Your hair is all fucked up. I mean, everything is a
Yeah.
mess. But they would come regularly, Gretzky, Robitaille, even when I'm in the hole. So that meant a lot. And then eventually I got out.
What happened after 6 months in the hole?
6 months out, I'm out. And they say, we're transferring you immediately. They don't tell you where you're going when you get transferred. They said, but we can just tell you that we're telling you that we believe you're a threat to the institution. And when we say institution, we mean the entire prison system institution. In theory, could I have brought in drugs or guns? Yes. Would I? Of course not. All I'm doing is getting,
Right.
these are the minor perks. So, first place they shipped me was to Phoenix, which is a medium-high security prison. I was there for quite a while, and they had another nearby prison, which was for the people squealed, and so they had shots.
Snitch prison.
Snitch prison.
Imagine that.
So the snitch place, there was all the time, every night, guns are going off
Damn.
because they're shooting at the people in
Yeah.
that prison from the mountains above. So that was crazy, and it was pretty violent there. I never myself was because I'm not a gang member. I'm not involved in that kind of stuff. But it was pretty violent. And then I went from there to Oklahoma City, where Tim McVeigh was at the time, and I was in the hole. It's like where Tim McVeigh was about 2 doors down. Yeah.
He was literally
On
dead.
death row,
Oh,
because
yeah.
death row was right where the
Yeah.
hole was. And then I went from there to Leavenworth, and to Terre Haute, and eventually ended up at Milan, Michigan, which is about 30 miles south of Detroit. Basically comprised of gangs. Mainly, it's virtually all black. gang members. It was me and a white guy from a mob guy. But they were very nice to me. They all knew sports. I owned basketball teams, all that stuff. They loved me, So everywhere I went, I was in cool shape. And I would, try to teach them, try to talk to them and teach them a little bit, because they were indoctrinated with things that just weren't true, which annoys me to this day when I see movies that have blacks in Rome that were slaves, basically. There's no black guys of authority, but saying that Cleopatra was black. Cleopatra was Greek, blonde with blue eyes. She was Greek. She wasn't black. So I would teach them this, and I'm giving you a short version of it all. And I got along very well. And then finally I was told that I had a release date, and I knew the date. And I would, in Milan, I would walk the yard and, try to stay in shape as best I could. And one day, one guy comes up to me, and he's yapping at me. I didn't understand a word he's saying. Some black guy is coming up to me. I don't know what he's doing. I walk away, and my friends come up. What that guy want? I don't know. I don't understand him. No idea.
There's a lot of crazies like that.
They were crazies.
Yeah.
He says, "Don't worry about it." Maybe an hour later, sirens are going off. Everything is going crazy. We're all put back in our cells, and I don't know what it's about. A couple days later, I'm let out. 2 days later, and my friends go up and they says, "We took care of that business." I said, "What?" He says, "Well, this guy was crazy, and he wanted to make sure he never got out. He was going to do something pretty bad. And he had knives and everything else. So, unfortunately, he didn't make it."
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm going to get charged with murder. That's my next
Yeah.
fear.
Oh, yeah.
If I were to get out, then I
You're like, I got a date.
I ordered a hit. That's
yeah.
my mind's going
Yeah.
crazy. But eventually I was released. Got out of prison. And they picked up and by a very good friend of mine who had helped me take care of my kids and everything else while I was in prison, Robert Geringer, and my still girlfriend Mara, who had stayed with me the entire time, 5 years. So I go to this halfway house, which is in Hollywood.
I think I went to that one. We were both on that one.
You may have been. Was there a crack house next door and a whorehouse?
I'm not sure.
Each side of it.
It looked like a lot of that was around.
A lot of it was around.
It's like near Western.
Yeah,
Is it like,
Western and something.
and Sunset near.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're the same one.
Same place.
Oh, yeah.
So there you go. So I'm there, and as you know, you're allowed to get out, look for jobs and that stuff.
Yeah.
And right away, I get a call from the Michael Eisner wanted to speak to me. So here's the chairman of Disney.
Yeah, I never got one of those calls.
He said, "I love the letters you'd have. They were so funny. They were so great. You got to write a book." I said, "Michael, I'm not going to write a book. Come on." He said, "Oh, we'll help get you a ghostwriter." He said, "So call this guy who runs Hyperion Press, which we own. It's a major press." I said, "Okay." Guy calls me. He says, "Well, I want to thank you first of all because I've never spoken to Michael Eisner in the 10 years I've been president of this company."
That's crazy.
So I said, "Well, great. So we'll send you a contract, a proposal and a contract." "Who's your agent?" I guess Michael Eisner. I have no idea.
Yeah.
So they did. They sent one to Michael and one to me. Michael gets a hold of me and he says, "Okay, the contract's okay, but remove the film and TV rights that we're asking for." Now, this is the guy who owns the company,
Yeah.
or is chairman of the company,
Right.
telling me what to do. He was so good that way. So I did that. They put a ghostwriter named Michael D'Antonio, who won 2 Pulitzer Prizes. Brilliant guy, very nice man. We spent a lot of time together. I wrote this book, Fun While It Lasted. Became a bestseller, and well, certainly in hockey areas, especially
Yeah.
Canada, of course, and
Yeah.
L.A., of course, and so on. And so my post time, I got out. I met very early on. I went to live with my then girlfriend Mara. It was obvious that living together is not going to work. That's just not going to happen. So I left, and I ended up meeting this girl, Dana Hester, whose house you're in now.
Okay.
And she was a court reporter. And so we met, started talking. She was 20 some odd years younger than I am. I don't know. And she had 3 kids. And I have 2 kids. So we got together and eventually got married. I was able, with the funds I had from the book sales and so forth, had the money that we bought the house you're now in Tarzana here. And we had this relationship for all those years. And then on the business side of it, I reconnected with my kids. Would go to my son's a football player. They went to Harvard Westlake School here.
Oh, nice.
And my daughter is very smart. My son was also, but an athlete. Played. He was a big guy. He's 6. You wouldn't know it from me, but he's 6'3" and about 280. And so that was fun. And we'd go to the games, and I had reconnected with my kids. And then I connected with her kids. Got their kids, her son, Drew, who you guys all know, into a private school in Boston called Governor Dummer, where he subsequently met his current wife, only wife, maybe the only person he ever dated, actually. Then we, and the 2 girls, we got into Archer, another private school here in L.A. So my private life's going well. And Robert Geringer, who was a lawyer, mainly for. Okay, good. Mainly for real estate, and he had help pay for my kids and take care of them while I was in prison. So when I got out, what can I do? Well, I have this big fund I'd like to raise. So I put together a couple of calls, and I got them $10 million. Bang.
Deal making, right back.
Right. Got him his $10 million. And so we worked together with that. And then also right away, I was contacted by Tim Lewicki to come down to the Staples Center. It was Staples Center. Will be again soon because I'm sure that crypto will be dead. But that's my own opinion. Talk about fraud. People that should go to prison, right?
I know.
You think as long as there's another sucker to buy this stuff, you could sell anything. Anyway, that's another story. So, and he told me, Tim Lewicki ran the AEG, and the Lakers, the Kings, everything else, in the building. And he said, I want you to know, from our standpoint, you built this. We wouldn't have built this without you. You have access to anything you ever want. You want tickets. So I would go to the games. I would park where the players park. We would, all this. And when the Kings won their 2 Stanley Cups, in both cases, the players said I should get a ring as well. So I have both players, both rings.
The players' rings.
Players from the.
They did send me, because I had a suite back in 2012.
Right.
They did send me an owner suite, like the ring for the Kings.
Oh, that's
customized
nice.
One.
That's nice. Yeah. So they did that. So they treat me great. And now Luc Robitaille is the president of the Kings.
Yeah.
He runs the Kings. So I'm in touch with him all the time. He again is very gracious to give me whatever I want, and that's sort of a nice feeling there. And then I was always a golfer.
Yeah.
That wasn't I wasn't bad actually as a golfer.
We all golf, actually. We love golf.
Okay, good. I can't golf anymore.
I
with
know
my
your
back.
back.
My back is messed up, and I can't golf. It's probably one of the things that helped get my back screwed up, by the way, because the turn you make is not proper. And I ended up with very soon. One of the places I belonged then was Mountain Gate Country Club.
Okay. My in-laws are members there. For
All
50
Asians
years.
are there.
Yeah, I know. I know.
If you haven't figured it out yet.
I know. Oh, there's a lot of them there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they run the show.
Yeah.
Because the Koreans up there,
Yeah.
to get a time, you got to be a Korean.
Yeah.
So I go up there. I'm Korean. So anyway, but so right away I meet on the driving range this fellow. He comes up to me and says, "Bruce McNall, huh? Yeah. My name is Nick Cassavetes. I'm a movie director." "Oh, cool." He said, "Do you want to? I'm going to make you a movie right now, coming up to it, called The Notebook. So why don't you come there, check it out, see what we can do." Again, to make a long story short, we formed a company with him and a fellow named Steve Markoff, who became my big partner. Steve Markoff was in the coin business as well, but in modern coins. Became the largest trader in silver and gold in the world. Owned Gold Line and all these giant companies. And, he had some of an interest a little bit. So we formed a company, and Cassavetes is part of it. And so we I worked a deal out and made a film with Cassavetes directing at the time, called Alpha Dog, which was the story of a kid that was killed by drug dealer friends. And it started because Cassavetes is a brilliant guy and getting every star in town to do it. So he had multiple stars, including Bruce Willis was in it, Sharon Stone was in it, Justin Timberlake's first film was in it. Job. And so we started with that. I arranged the financing. I didn't have Markov finance it. I had him do the pre-production, but then I was able to get foreign sales done and domestic distribution from people I knew back in the day. So that film was done and made. And then several other projects we would do, My Sister's Keeper and others that we were involved with Nick. And meanwhile, I was in the process of working with Markov, Steve, to put together various deals he likes. He's a lender. He's a basic lender. He's looking for various deals. I helped build a coin collection for him, for ancient coins, which he never had before. And we built an unbelievable collection of coins that he ended up selling for about double what we paid. So he was happy, everybody's happy. And so I was involved with, so that's why I went back into the areas that I knew, the coins, the movie business.
You didn't burn any bridges.
No, I had no bridges.
So many friends stayed with you during, after.
Yeah, it was very fortunate. I had
just the government, not even the banks.
Yeah, right. As a matter of fact, I went back and got in the horse business a little bit. Markov financed a few horse purchases we did very well with. My old horse people that I dealt with remained there for me, so we did that. Barry Gordy went back and bought some horses with us. So it's been very good after.
So how, you made deals before prison, after prison,
Right.
in prison.
Right.
How's the Bruce McNall before prison different than the Bruce McNall after prison? Because you got right back into it. Did any part of you change, do you think?
Well, a few things. I think, honestly, I had accomplished more than I ever could dream. And when you own, as a guy, the coolest thing is owning a sports team.
Oh yeah, I told you before. I wanted to do it, and
Right.
there's no way you can do it now.
No,
Like,
no. These days, in those days, I had intimate relationships with the players.
Yeah.
We had a conversation. We talked. We deal. If I traded somebody, we cried together.
Yeah.
You know, we had an emotional relationship. I don't think that happens these days very often. It may, but not to my knowledge as much. So I think the change is basically, I'm not that interested anymore in building a huge empire. I've done that. The stresses of it, I don't need anymore.
Right.
So if I do little things that I can help some people and, you know, make their dreams come true if I could, and I think I have. I'm working now with a fellow, Greg Morris, who has Greg Morris Cards, and he's the largest seller on eBay of any product,
Right.
period. Brilliant in what he does. I enjoy it because he needs help, and I can help him. You know, I own the card that brought it all, the history of together.
Yeah.
I own the company.
Yeah.
That was huge.
And you're part owner of the Upper Deck.
Upper deck.
Yeah.
So I mean, so we together, I enjoy that because he needs some things in his life, and so I enjoy that part of it, and I don't have the pressures of financing it myself, of being the number, having everybody come to me with everything. All they do anyway, but not with the responsibilities.
Right.
I don't have that level of responsibility, so I'm very comfortable that way. So
Right.
that's a change.
And then, you know, today, goals moving forward. What are your
Yeah.
What are your goals? Goals now, more just relaxing?
Survive. I'm 74 years old. I didn't think I'd make it to 34.
You live 10 lives.
Yeah,
You did
I've
live
had
10
enough lives. And I tell you the truth, after this back injury and the surgery afterwards, boy, it brings you down to earth because you know I can't walk without a walker. I can't at the moment. Now I'm in the rehab period.
Yeah.
The rehabbing. Hopefully I'll be able to be okay one of these days. But in the meantime, the pain is there, the inability to move. So I'm more concerned about those things and, you know, dealing with the family that's here, which my kids, both of my kids, my son got married here, outside of the house here, which was nice. And, you know, so I like doing that, you know, interacting with the family that I never did that much.
Yeah.
When I was on
I'm
top
sure
of
you
the world,
couldn't. It was too hard.
I'm on the road all the time.
Yeah.
Between movies, hockey,
Yeah.
football,
Yeah.
being in the press every day
Yeah.
for one of those sports
Yeah.
teams especially, then later on with the demise, I'm just, in a sense, just happy to relax a little bit.
And blessed. You got
Yeah.
your family.
I got the
friends.
family and friends, all the friends that have remained so close to me. That means a lot. So I think that's primarily it.
Yeah. It's great.
Bruce, unbelievable story.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy, I guess.
It's crazy.
A lot of craziness. I look back sometimes and I myself can't believe it. I go, oh my God. People remind me of things from time to time. Oh, yeah, you're right. I forgot that. You know, that's what happens, you know.
Well, you know, I'm sure there's more that we haven't discussed. You know, we might have to do a part 2.
Sure.
Yeah.
Whatever time you'd like.
Yeah.
No problem.
But-
Love to do it.
Definitely. Thank you for inviting us to your home,
You're more than welcome.
telling your story.
I hope somebody out there enjoys it
Yeah.
and will listen and
You may not have the perks that he had, but
Yeah. Different time. Different
at
time.
least
Different
you can
times.
see you can still succeed.
yeah,
even
exactly.
after.
Exactly. I hate to think I knew that in prison every year it got worse. Something got worse. I imagine that
Yeah.
same with you
Same
guys.
thing. Same thing.
It always got worse. Nothing ever gets better.
When we were in, it was bad, and then I heard when we got out, it was like during COVID, that was even worse.
Yep.
And I'm sure it's just getting worse and worse.
Yeah,
so.
worse and worse and worse. Nothing gets better. So I'm happy if you'd like to come back and do another part 2. We'll do that. No
Yes,
problem.
Thank you so
In the
much.
works.
Love it.
Thank you.
No,
Thank you.
but again, viewers, again, this is a great episode. LA Legend. Thank you for watching Criminal Code. I'm Tony, the host.
Sam.
Sam
Sam.
and Sonny.
You ain't indicted?
Cut? You ain't indicted?
You ain't invited.
You ain't invited. Thank you. Make comments below, and we'll be sure to touch
Yeah.
base. All of
Thank
them are
you.
great. And again, Bruce, thank you.
Welcome. Absolutely. Love to see you. Great.